Hi, I'm Jeff Stark. Thanks for being with me today. Those of you who have been following my YouTube channel are familiar with the fact that over the last number of weeks, couple of months, I have recorded some videos on pornography. To date, there is, I think, 5 of them, and they're very helpful to husbands and wives, and the last 3 have been singly devoted to single men who struggle with the problem of pornography, which is if you're a single guy and you don't struggle with pornography, well, God bless you and keep up the good work, but you are a rare person who doesn't stumble and fall and perhaps even have a really difficult time not doing pornography. So it's a very, very prevalent problem, and it is also an extremely serious problem as well. Now, pornography, 99% of the time, is connected with our theme today in the next some series of videos that we're going to be putting together about the matter of masturbation. People don't really have, I believe, an addiction to pornography. Pornography is a means to an end. Men or women, but I'm speaking exclusively from a male point of view. I'm a male, obviously, and know more about these things relative to the men that I've counseled as opposed to the women. But men who do pornography, 99% of the time, pornography leads to an occasion of masturbation. Now, sometimes men, when pornography is not available, like in the shower, they may choose to masturbate, but nonetheless, they may conjure up images that they've had in order to get an erection so that they can masturbate. But pornography really is a means to an end. Pornography is to arouse a person in such a way that they can then go to the goal of arousal, and the goal is orgasm and masturbation and orgasm that comes with this. Now, by the way, we're talking about very intimate, very private, and very sensitive matters in these videos of pornography, and now these videos on masturbation. So you want to be careful, men or wives and husbands, as to who your audience is and where the boys and girls are in the family or otherwise. So this is for your viewing, but for your private viewing, be careful who may be looking over your shoulder or listening. Okay, pornography is a means to an end. Like alcohol. Alcohol is usually a means to an end. When you are dealing with an alcoholic, you're dealing with somebody who has an addiction to alcohol, but it's really an addiction to what alcohol leads him into. Being a recovering alcoholic, I would say myself, I found that alcohol was a means to my end of getting an anxiety-free hour or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I was really addicted to having that calm and that peace and that anxiety-free life, and the best way that I was able to accomplish that was through alcohol. Alcohol for me was simply a means to an end, and that is to have a good time, and that meant be anxiety-free and calm and peaceful and without worries about tomorrow and the next day. I think that's true with any other addiction, cocaine, marijuana, and so forth and so on. Those are means, including pornography, to an end, in this case, the orgasm, and the peace and the pleasure and the cessation of anxieties and stress that orgasm can bring a man, and that's what the goal really is. That's what the addiction really is too. Not the pornography so much, and not the masturbation itself, but the orgasm where my anxieties are gone, the stress is gone, my fears are gone, my dismay is gone, my boredom is gone. That's really the goal in mind here. Okay, so that's kind of just an introduction to the series of videos that we're going to be entitling Masturbation, and today's number 1. What I'd like to do today is just run by you what I have learned through counseling men with this problem, of how this problem of masturbation develops in the life of a young person into the ages of becoming older and older as they get older. Okay, so we're going to be tracing what is commonly the metamorphosis, the trail, How does this particular masturbation and perhaps addiction to masturbation or addiction to orgasm, how does this develop? When did it develop, and what is the course of development that this usually takes? And I'm going to give you the average man would be saying, what an average man would be saying in terms of how this developed in his life, as he were to look back and trace the footsteps of how this addiction to orgasm really came to pass. Okay, so generally speaking, I'm going to put it down into 4 different parts: part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and we're going to start right now with part 1. Part 1. Most guys, when they're young, probably in elementary school, in that age, it would be late if it would be junior high, so probably pre-junior high or early junior high or in elementary school. Young men tend to say that they began interest in pornography because their fathers had pornography laying around the house. Maybe it was hidden. In my case, it was hidden by my dad. I happened to find it when I was probably in 5th grade, something like that, and I kept going back occasionally, once a week or so, sometimes with a friend or two. We would open up and take a look at what the pages really were all about, and it was interesting and fascinating to us. And but it started at a very early age, and usually does for most men. Now, that's something that young boys might do rarely. Frequency varies from boy to boy, but that's phase 1, and how a young person can get introduced to that. They find things in their father's drawers. They find things underneath the bed. They find things in the mattress. They find things downstairs in the workshop, and they dabble in that, and that's how it usually begins. Now, that develops into part 2. Part 2 is when the boy starts to get older. He's pre-junior high and through junior high, and he's found that by looking at pornography, he gets an erection, and he learns that how to masturbate and how to bring himself to orgasm. And now, instead of it being rare, it becomes something that he does through junior high. He does it through high school. Obviously, he's probably doing it more frequently as well. And what's beginning to happen now is there's a habit beginning to be developed. Maybe it's once or twice a week. And as he gets into high school, even some young men admit to the fact that this bleeds over into having sex with girls if they're available. But if not, then this becomes more regular, a regularly regimented thing on the part of boys who can find that they can induce an erection, and then by way of their own means, they can masturbate and bring themselves to an orgasm anytime that they really want to. And it's increasingly becoming more interesting and pleasurable. And for that reason, they're now, in the course of doing it more frequently, they're beginning to develop a habit. Okay, so that's junior high, high school, perhaps even early college. Now, as that young man transitions over into phase 3, now what's happening is that this addiction to the orgasm and to pornography usually, but our concern is masturbation and orgasm. This addiction now is beginning to grow an appetite. As he's been feeding this habit, this habit is developing an appetite. And so he can't just do it and go away and come back whenever he wants to, maybe a day, a week, a month. No. Now, because there's been many dozens of occasions, perhaps probably even hundreds of occasions when he's been masturbating, coming to orgasm, that now physiologically, now his body starts to tell him that there's an appetite. You've developed an appetite for this thing, and now your body is beginning to ask you, maybe knock on your door, or even eventually demand that you pay attention to it. and that you satisfy it by bringing it to an orgasm. So having done it many hundreds of times, now the body's developing an appetite which causes this young man to do it more and more. He tries to stop. Maybe he's able to stop a little bit here and there, but that appetite's a hard thing. The appetite now is a craving. It's very difficult to say no, but he maintains it through high school and through college, telling himself all the time, I can stop this whenever I want to, but this is pleasurable, and I'm enjoying this. And when you get into the high school and college years, something else is it's not only developing a habit and an appetite and a craving that is beginning to say, so, it's like you're thirsty. When you're thirsty, you're craving a glass of water. Well, your body begins to crave this physiological orgasmic release, and it's very difficult to ignore, and most young people would not ignore it. They would give into it because not giving into it would be very difficult, very hard for hours or for days. And so let's just do it and get it over with and move on. But every time they do that, that appetite and that craving's getting stronger and stronger, getting harder and harder to say no to. Now, this young person's probably saying to themselves, let's put this person in the course of college or early post-college, having done this through junior high and high school and college. The appetite's grown, it's become a craving, and he's all the while telling himself that he can stop this. He tries to stop, but it's not really urgent to stop, and probably knows that everybody else is doing it, so why not? It's not hurting anybody, and I can stop anytime that I want to. Now, what's also taking place is something that's very, very important to understand. Now I'm not simply masturbating to have orgasmic pleasure. But when I was in college, this young man would be relaying back to me, when he was going to have a test, an exam, that day, that evening, and he was very stressed about the exam, well, he might masturbate to relieve himself of that stress. He might be anxious about going out on a date. He might be anxious about any number of things. He might be stressed here, stressed there. He might be discouraged. He might be depressed. He might be angry. And what he has found over these many hundreds of times of bringing himself to an orgasm is when he has an orgasm, at the end of it, he really feels very relieved. Physiologically, he's calm. He's at peace. His anxieties have gone away. And he's really calmed down from discouragement, from anger, from stress. And so what this begins to turn into is not simply a pleasurable orgasmic experience, but now I start to look to it as a way of managing and handling my anxieties, my fears, my stress. I mean, and stress, we have stress every day. Even in college. And so what it begins to do is this is not just an orgasmic experience now, but now I'm turning to it to help me to resolve day to day and week to week and month to month emotional problems. And it's very effective. It's very effective. And therefore I find myself going back to it more and more and more. And that's phase number 3. It's a stress reliever. It's an anxiety reliever. It's a discouragement reliever. In addition to the fact that it's pleasurable, and it's a way also when I'm bored. A young man would talk about being bored. Well, what am I going to do? Well, I'll masturbate. When I masturbate, my boredom's gone. Okay. Now there's a phase 4, and that is phase 4 now is I've tried to stop, and I'm finding that I'm having a very, very difficult time doing it, stopping that is, and I'm really finding that I can't stop. But I've been challenged to stop, and I've tried to stop, and I'm having a very difficult time, and I've tried many times to stop, and I can't stop. But I've really got to stop, and one man might say, I'm at this stage right now. I've tried to stop and I can't stop. It's just too hard to stop. And I saw Jeff Stark's video number on pornography, number 5. where it says this addiction and this interest in pornography, masturbation, orgasm disqualifies a single God from marriage. Well, I believe them. Jeff Stark made a very compelling case, and I, as a single person wanting to be married, I began to realize if he's right, I've got to stop this problem. I've got to be able to tell a girl who asks me, do you do pornography and masturbation? And I've got to be ready to tell her for 2 years I haven't. Holy smokes, I've really got to get to the root of this thing and deal. And as he tries, he finds out he can't do it. It's very difficult. It's very, very hard. He now discovers that he has an addiction that's extremely difficult to stop, and he's not able to stop. And all the while, he was telling himself over the years, I can stop this anytime that I want. I can stop this anytime that I want. I can stop this at any time that I want. But now, I can't. Well, what happened was he crossed a line not knowing he crossed a line because he was telling himself, I can stop anytime. And he was convincing himself. But he crossed over that line to being more easily able to stop to not being able to stop. He crossed the line to where it became an addiction. He always thought he could stop anytime that he wanted to. And now that he wants to, now he realizes he's addicted. And he's been that addicted for a while. And now he's really in trouble because who's going to marry a man who has any addiction to cocaine or marijuana? Or to gambling, or to pornography and masturbation. Any woman in her right mind would not marry a man like that, and now he's finding himself in phase 4, addicted to this pleasurable experience, but he's also realizing now in a much clearer and broader way that this is something, this has become a God substitute. When life gets hard, I don't turn to God, I turn to orgasm. When I'm really, really discouraged, I don't turn to God. I turn to orgasm. When I'm really, really anxious, I don't turn to God in the gospel. I turn to masturbation and I turn to orgasm and probably pornography to assist in that endeavor. When I'm depressed, when I'm bored, when I'm lonely, well, I have found that I don't turn to God now. He's realizing in phase 4, I don't turn to God. I am a Christian, but I realize now the better part of my life is not turned to God because I've developed a God substitute that's very effective. Whenever I turn to God with my anxieties, and whenever I turn to God with my boredom, whenever I turn to God with my discouragements, I don't get the relief from God that I get when I have an orgasm. It's very effective. When I was an alcoholic and I was drinking as I was, when I had anxieties, I would turn to drinking. Well, drinking gave me a calm that God never gave me. And so it was very, very effective, but it was also very sinful for the reasons why I was doing that. But anyway, in phase 4, now as we've gone from young to middle school and high school and college, and now he's a early young adult, he's realizing he has addiction. He's trying to stop, but it's very, very hard to do, and he's not been able to do it. And that's phase 4, where he realizes that he's not only got an addiction to orgasm, but that he has behind this is a God and gospel substitute. And this may give explanation why his spirituality may be less than it really ought to be at his age and for the duration that this young man has been training himself in the scriptures and in the gospel. Okay, that's a pretty common way that these matters develop. It's not exhaustive. There's a lot of details that are left out. But that most men would say in some way or another that would describe as they would look back from having this addiction, how it developed in ways that we've talked about here today. Now, what we're going to do in our second video titled Masturbation, we're going to look at the problems that this man has now that he has been masturbating and orgasming, if that's a word, for 10, 20, or 30 years. This man's going to have a problem, and we're going to unload or unpack, I should say, what those problems are going to be. as we would have a chance to talk to a man. And there are a lot of them who are in phase 4 who are seeking counseling, wisely doing so. But we're going to look at what happens when I've dedicated myself for the last 20 years to turning not to God, but to this as a way of dealing with life. Okay, look forward to being with you in masturbation video number 2.